Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Taya and this is Taya's Turning Pages. So today we're going to go over all of the books that I read for the month of September. I only read 5 books. 3 of those books were featured in my most recent reading vlog, so I will leave that linked up above in the cards just in case you haven't checked it out yet. I'm just going to group them all together and just run down the titles and give you guys, like I said, my quick thoughts on them. The lowest rated book out of these 3 books, which I think is sitting at a 3.5 star. I'm going to leave the correct rating on the screen because I am backed up on Bookstagram reviews, so I don't know exactly what I rated this in my reading vlog, and it is The Spare Room by Andrea bartz. So I realized that this is actually a very polarizing book in the book community right now. I didn't necessarily hate this book, but it wasn't my favorite, and it wasn't my favorite by Andrea bartz. But it was still very entertaining and honestly very unsettling and disturbing too. I felt very uncomfortable and just kind of icky reading this book, but it was still, like I said, very entertaining, and it really felt like a popcorn thriller to me. And the second book out of these 3 books, which is sitting at a 4 star, is None of This Is True by Jewell. This one is probably going to come as a shock to some of you if you haven't watched my reading vlog, just because I go on and on and on about how much I love Jewell and how she is my #1 favorite thriller author. Like, she is my goat when it comes to thrillers. And while I did rate this book a 4 star, which is obviously not a bad rating at all, this wasn't my favorite by her. I do feel like I'm a little bit in the minority with this one. I've seen nothing but glowing, positive 5-star reviews for this book, and while I understand why people rated it that highly, I just didn't really resonate with the story as I have with her other books. But it was a fascinating story, and I do feel like that this book really reaffirmed the fact that Jewell is not the 1 or the 2. Like, a lot of these other thriller authors cannot compete. I'm sorry, like, a lot of them cannot. I feel like while this is still a classic Jewell novel where there are a lot of twists, it's very ominous, it's very dark, very somber, I still felt like it was still refreshing, new, and innovative. I highly recommend checking out the audiobook for this because there is a podcast element included in the story, and the way in which Jewell and the publisher really makes the experience feels as though you are listening to an actual podcast is so cool. And the last book out of these 3, which is the highest rated book, and it is sitting at a 5 star, is The Only One Left by Riley Sager. So this is actually the second book that I've ever read by Riley Sager. The first one was Survive the Night. I am a Survive the Night apologist. So like I said, this is my favorite thriller out of all 3 of these. I just love gothic literature. That is just one of the best genres in my opinion. It does hit harder when you read it in October and November, of course. As you can see right here, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde is my favorite classic of all time. So any book that gives me the same somber, dark, melancholic vibes as The Picture of Dorian Gray or any other gothic literature book is always going to get me up out of my seat. And that's exactly what happened with The Only One Left. Just 10, 10, 10s across the board. So like I said, if you want to know more about my in-depth thoughts on each of these books, just check out that reading vlog. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the 2 final books that I read in the month of September, and both of these books are sitting at a 5 star. They're both romances, and they're both written by my favorite authors, and I'm just so happy that I read these books because you guys know, if you've been following my channel for a little minute, I've been on and off with my mental health, and in turn that has affected my reading, but these 2 books really reminded me why I love reading so much, why I love the escapism that reading provides. It was a little bit hard for me to decide which book to talk about first because I just love both of these books. So the first book that I have here that is sitting at a 5 star is Nighthawk by Beverly Jenkins. So y'all, your girl finally read a Beverly Jenkins book in like 6 months, and she finally read Nighthawk. Put some respect on my name because you guys know I have included this in pretty much every single TBR video for a long time. It was getting really unserious. I'm really happy that I was finally able to knock this off in my TBR and read it in the month of September because it was just everything and more, and I knew I was going to love this book just because I really love the male MC in here, Ian, but reading it was just, it really exceeded my expectations. Beverly Jenkins typically gets 5-star ratings from me. I really resonate with her historical romances, but this one, yeah, this one might be coming for Through the Storm's Throne. I'm not even gonna hold y'all. This story follows 2 characters named Ian and Maggie, but starting with Ian, Ian is actually a bounty hunter, and he has been a bounty hunter for a long time, and he's really good at his job. And it's unfortunate because you can tell that he really threw himself into his work because his former wife, Tilda, was murdered. And so Ian is pretty much only consumed by his work. He doesn't have time for anything else, especially not love or romance, until my girl Maggie comes into the story. Maggie is Afro-Indigenous, and that does play a huge part in the story. So you can only imagine the mistreatment that Maggie receives on a daily basis, especially with this being set in the 1800s. And so Maggie has had a very rough life. Her parents passed away when she was only 12 years old, and she's been on her own ever since. She doesn't have any other family or really any other friends to look out for her, and so she's been fending for herself ever since her parents passed away. And she's picking up any jobs that she can get, and because of her identity, this makes it really hard for her to obtain work and for her to be treated fairly and respectfully. One day, Maggie ends up getting attacked by this guy, and long story short, he he ends up dying. And so now Maggie is being accused of this man's murder, even though she's maintaining her innocence. So because of the optics of this case, because Maggie is Afro-Indigenous and the man that died was a white man, there are a lot of people on Maggie's head. So because of this, Maggie has to get transferred to another jail slash prison, so that way she can be held there until she faces a judge. And so Ian essentially gets assigned to safely escort Maggie to a different jail. While they're on this journey, they start to get to know one another, sparks start to fly, and the story takes off from there. Beverly Jenkins throws you right into the action-packedness of this story. The stakes were consistently high from page 1 up until the end. I actually found myself holding my breath throughout a lot of the chapters because I was so worried for Maggie's well-being and what was going to happen to her. Obviously, I've read so many Beverly Jenkins books, so I know how her stories usually play out. There's a specific formula for that, but I was still really shook for my girl because, like I said, with her being Afro-Indigenous in the 1800s and a woman, she was going through a lot. Her entire existence was considered an abomination through so many different characters' eyes, and it really broke my heart. Maggie was getting denied jobs, getting denied housing, getting denied basic decency and respect from people. I really love the fact that Beverly Jenkins includes those types of topics as well as these types of diverse characters in her stories because they just hit harder and it sends a larger message. I really did love the romance and just the tenderness between Ian and Maggie, especially because with Maggie dealing with so much bullshit day in and day out within her life, and Ian as well, because Ian is also biracial, so Ian knows exactly what Maggie is experiencing and vice versa. And so I love the fact that they were able to find each other and be able to relate to one another on a different level. And I just love when the soul ties slash soulmates and twin flame trope pops up throughout romance books because it just makes the story feel more mythic to me and just more romantic and fun. And I just loved these two characters so much, individually but also collectively. Their relationship was so fun to read about. I loved getting further into the book because you can just tell that they were finding out new things about one another and just discovering new things about each other and really exploring their romance and feelings for one another. And that's, you know, of course, one of the most fun things in the beginning of a relationship is just trying to find out any little piece of information about your partner whenever you can. And it was just so cute to be able to read about these two doing that, especially with them both having such a hard time finding love and finding the right partner. Going back to my earlier point about this book being very action-packed, this was such an adventurous Beverly Jenkins book. I'm starting to realize how much I genuinely love the road trip trope in romance stories because these characters, of course, are just like forced to get to know each other and deal with each other. And so, like I said, to be able to read about them exploring their feelings for one another, trying to figure out their next move and their partner's next move, it's just a good time. It's so cute, it's so fun. Honestly, I could go on and on and on about how much I love this book and how much I adore these two characters, especially Ian, because he is just truly one of the best book boyfriends in the world. Like, that's a good man, Savannah. That's a good man. And I knew it. I told y'all in my other videos, Ian's story was going to be really compelling because him as a character is just so compelling. I love how even though he is a rugged bounty hunter, he's so very respectful and such a gentleman. And I just, oh, I love it. I love it. I swooned. And I was so happy that Maggie was able to bag Ian because she needed some of that in her life. With everything, like I said, she was dealing with and the hardships that she's faced, it was so refreshing to read about her being able to get some type of happiness in her life. And you could tell that Ian really made her happy. And that was another thing with Ian and Maggie. They were so funny, especially Maggie. Maggie is definitely one of my favorite Beverly Jenkins female characters, just simply off of the fact of how funny she was. I love that she was able to retort Ian at any turn and she was able to keep up with him. Anytime he said something to her, my girl was right back and clapped back with something. And it was fun. So if you guys are in the market to read a new Beverly Jenkins book or just to pick up a Beverly Jenkins book in general, pick up Nighthawk. I mean, I do think that you should read The Taming of Jessie Rose first because Ian's character, I'm pretty sure, is introduced in that book, and there is a reference to The Taming of Jessie Rose in this book. You don't necessarily have to read it first, but I would, just because one, more Beverly Jenkins content, duh, like why would you not want that? But two, you get introduced to Ian and it really sets the stage for his character. Okay, y'all, and now we are going to move into the last book, which I'm really happy about because your girl is sweating. I'm sure you can tell by how I'm looking right now. I can't really see myself too well in the viewfinder, but I'm dying in this room. Like, I had no fan, no window open because I gotta get this video filmed and everybody is outside. Apologies if I look really sweaty and just a fucking mess, but we're almost done. So the last book that I have here that is also sitting at a 5-star, but it is my highest rated 5-star out of all the 5 stars in this video, is Queen Move by Miss Kennedy Ryan. Where do I even begin? What do I say? When do it becomes, you know, but seriously, what do I say about a book that I could say so much about? Like, where do I even start? I genuinely don't even know. I haven't even posted my review for this on Bookstagram because I'm still trying to articulate my thoughts and what I truly want to say about this book, so that way people can understand the way in which this book shifted something
in my soul.
Like, truly, like, this book, it did something to my soul. And we'll get into that. I know it sounds dramatic, but like, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, like, this book really changed the game for me and really changed my perspective and outlook on Kennedy Ryan in a great way, of course. But I already thought she was a talented and fantastic and amazing writer, but this book really reaffirmed it for me that she is the chosen one. So this story follows two characters named Kimba and Ezra, and real quick, Kimba actually makes an appearance in the All Kingsman duology, so the Kingmaker and the Rebel King. I definitely recommend reading those books first before you jump into this one. Even though this is considered a standalone, I still feel like those two books really do, again, set the stage for Kimba's character. Going back to what I was saying, Kimba is a highly successful / career-oriented woman. She works in the political sphere, and she is known for getting candidates that she takes on elected into high-profile positions, to the point where she was able to get one of her candidates elected as the president of the United States within this universe. So Kimba really is that girl, and she knows how to do her job, and she does it very, very well. But because of Kimba's demanding job, as well as some other factors, she hasn't really had that much time for romance or settling down. And Kimba is, I think, in her mid to late 30s, and so there are discussions and topics surrounding infertility and fertility, so just make sure you look up the trigger warnings for that. And while Kimba is trying to sort all of that out, her love interest Ezra reappears in her life. So Kimba and Ezra have known each other since they were literal babies. Like, they were born in the same day, and they've known each other, I think, since they were 6 months old. Obviously their parents knew each other. They were pretty much thrown together since they were 6 months old. From 6 months old all the way up until I think they were 13, they were inseparable. You could tell that their connection and their bond was on a different level. Once Kimba and Ezra are 13, there is an incident that happens between both of their families, and this causes Ezra and his family to move away. And this part of the story is set in the 1980s, and so this is before cell phones and the internet, and so Kimba and Ezra don't have any way of contacting each other, and so they do lose contact for, I think, 2 decades, so 20 years. But Kimba and Ezra have never forgotten about the other. They've always wondered what the other one got up to and where they are in life. And as circumstances and fate has it, Kimba and Ezra find themselves back in their hometown of Atlanta, and throughout the story, these two start to rekindle their friendship. But this underlying attraction and feelings that they have for one another when they were children starts to finally blossom. You follow them throughout the story, trying to figure out if they are finally going to get their second chance and if they're actually going to be able to get together and become a couple. First things first, as I kind of alluded to in the synopsis, this book is second chance romance, but it is also friends to lovers. And you guys know that I do not care for the friends to lovers trope. I've always said, and I've always felt like the trope is very boring. There's usually no tension or anything like that, and that's why I prefer enemies to lovers, because at least you're gonna get a little bit of action. You're gonna get a little bit of something, a little bit of bite with enemies to lovers. Whereas friends to lovers, I just feel like you never really get that. But because Kennedy Ryan is the talented queen that she is, you of course do get more with the friends to lovers trope in this book. And honestly, y'all, she single-handedly changed my mind on trope. I gotta give my girl her 10s. Like, I have to give her her 10s as usual, because this book, specifically Kimba and Ezra, have shown me how beautiful a friends to lovers type of love can be. It was so evident that Kimba and Ezra were connected on a more spiritual level, honestly. I just loved how romantic the writing was and how Ezra and Kimba explained their love for one another. As you can see, hopefully, I tabbed this book up so much. I have so many quotes, so many different quotes, underlined, hearted, circled, exclamation points everywhere. Like, I could not get over the writing in this book, and I genuinely think that this is some of Kennedy Ryan's best work. Truly, this is a sleeper hit, because I feel like I don't see too many people talk about Queen Move. I was consumed by this book and devoured it so quickly. And again, that goes back to the writing. I don't know how Kennedy Ryan is able to outdo herself with every single romance book, but she does it. Like, she is truly here to stay, and I just really need people to start including her in these conversations about great, like, literary authors and just writers. I do want to read at least one of my absolute favorite quotes in this story. I really need y'all to understand just how beautiful it is. I don't want y'all to think I'm exaggerating or that I'm capping. This is one of my favorite quotes, and right here it says, "We are on the cusp of next, but tonight we have right now, and it's better than everything I've ever had. It must be as good as anything to come." Get into it. Get into it. Like I said, there are so many well-written and thoughtful and just introspective sentences that are included in this book, and we would be here all day if I tried to go through every single one and dissect them. But just know that the writing in here, absolutely stunning, brilliant, beautiful, dazzling, and I couldn't get enough of it. Now, getting into the actual characters overall, Ezra and Kimba, obsessed, absolutely love them, and honestly they're in my top 3 of favorite couples within the Kennedy Ryan universe. I was already intrigued by Kimba's character in the All Kingsman duology, especially because I saw bits and pieces of myself within Kimba, so I couldn't wait until I got to her story because I wanted to learn more about her and what really was her backstory and how she ended up in the political sphere. And of course, I really loved what Kimba represented as a Black female character, because with her working in the political sphere, she faces a lot of racism, misogyny, and misogynoir especially, and people just doubting her. Being a Black woman myself and working in corporate America. I can totally relate to some of the experiences that she's had, and especially as it relates to imposter syndrome. I just really love being able to, you know, see bits and pieces of myself represented in this story, especially by such a strong and strong-willed / minded character. I really loved Kimba. I actually just found a quote that relates to the idea of Kimba just being a very strong-willed and strong-minded character. Ezra actually says to her, "I want you when you're vulnerable, when you're lost, when you're not sure. I see the armor you have to put on to make it in your world. I just want you to know here, with me, you can take the armor off." Exactly. Hearing something like that and having your partner say something like that to you is just so precious. I can only imagine if Kimba was real, what that meant to her. And I feel like I could envision her, or really just anyone that was in her shoes, just taking a deep sigh and just basically feeling as if the weight of the world was lifted off of their shoulders. Like, I know exactly what point Kennedy Ryan was trying to make with that quote, and I just, oh, I love it, and I need more of that in my books. And then moving on to Ezra, I have no notes. I usually never have any notes when it comes to the men that Kennedy Ryan crafts in her books. The only male MC that I've ever had, like, conflicting thoughts on was Jared, and that goes without saying. If you read Blockshot, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Jared is a very polarizing character. He is a true morally gray character, but overall I still loved him, and I understand Banner, I understand you, girl. I understand why you're with Jared, right? But Ezra was just, I don't even know how to describe Ezra and just the type of man that he is. Once again, this is a good man to man. These are good men to man. A good man. Ezra was so mature, and he was highly emotionally intelligent. I just love when the male MC is like that. It just makes things so much easier, and it really does make the story more enjoyable, in my opinion. But of course, it does tie in with the fact that Ezra is older than I feel like a lot of the male MCs that we see in romance stories. He was just so emotionally intelligent and so in tune with his emotions and his feelings, and he was a very honest man. He really was about Kimba, and I just think that's absolutely beautiful on both ends. And even though I could write an entire dissertation on just how much more I love this book, I am going to try to, you know, wrap this up. I did also just want to say that I loved the topics and conversations surrounding identity and race. Ezra is biracial, so he is black and white, but he is also Jewish, and so he has a very unique and different experience than I feel like a lot of people. I just thought it was really refreshing to read about. I wanted to know more about him just as much as I wanted to know more about Kimba. I was not bored with either of these two, and that's something else that I forgot to mention, is that this is told in dual POVs, and I never got bored, like I said, with either of their chapters. I couldn't wait to get to Kimba's chapters, and then I couldn't wait to get to Ezra's chapters, especially when you got to read about how they both felt about each other internally, and being able to put the puzzle pieces together just really elevated the reading experience and made it more worthwhile, if that's even possible with Kennedy Ryan's books. Like, her books are always going to hit for me. This one just hit different, as you can tell by the way I'm gushing about it. Right now, this is my #1 favorite Kennedy Ryan book as of right now. I still have to read a few more of her books and read more of her backlist, because I do plan on filming a video dedicated to Kennedy Ryan's books and a guide to her books, so definitely make sure you stay tuned for that. But I will say, as of right now, this is in the #1 spot. Like, Kimba and Ezra 8. So Kennedy Ryan, if you are watching this, first of all, hey, but also thank you so much for creating this story and just creating stories in general, these compelling characters, and just reaching new heights when it comes to the world building within these romance stories. I really hope you guys were able to truly understand my passionate feelings for this book, but really just understanding the depth in which this book has. This is some of her best work. It truly is. Like, y'all see how much I tab this book? Like, can y'all see that? Do you see how much I tabbed this book? I literally ran out of pink tabs. Pink and orange and coral tabs, because I was going in. In conclusion, Kennedy Ryan, you will always be famous to me. Make sure you guys pick up this book and just pick up any of her books if you haven't yet, because it's giving legend. All right, y'all, those are all of the books that I read for the month of September. I had a great reading month. I just cannot wait to see what the rest of the year has to bring when it comes to my reading plans. I really hope that I can keep up this momentum and really get back to where I was averaging about 6 to 8 books a month. I'm happy that I at least made it to 5, so we love to see it. I'm hoping during October, aka Taya's Thrilltober, that I can read just as many books, if not more, of course, but we shall see. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me and my channel out. And lastly, please make sure you follow me on Bookstagram as well as Storygraph. I will leave all of that information linked down below, as well as at the end of the video, like I always do. I will see you guys in the next video.